Hello everyone, Science Viking here, and I'm ready to continue the Let's Play of Myth of Fallen Lords. We've finally managed to finish a long-awaited party, and we can move on to the next level, which honestly is considerably easier.
Monday, June 15th, the edge of the Dire Marsh. The Legion has come 250 miles in little more than 2 weeks. Not returning west to safety, but headed north toward the melted cities of the Trow and Ballos fortress. Back in Forest Heart, Ulrich convinced our officers that the west was lost, that our small force could contribute nothing to the hopeless battles that would soon be fought around Madrigal, Willow, and Tandem. These cities would fall, he said, and all their people would die whether we sacrificed ourselves or not. Then he told us what we could do instead. Ulrich was interrogated by Ballo during his captivity, and he learned by chance that Ballo had bound each of the fallen to himself to ensure their obedience to his will. The fallen draw their power through these links, and were Ballo to be killed, they would all be powerless. The armies of the dark would collapse. So Ballo must fall. But today we are only at the edge of the Dire Marsh, nearly 500 miles from his fortress, with the Watcher waiting in ambush ahead and Soulblighter shadowing us from behind. We have a long road before us. A few men and I are leaving the main column in a few moments to discover the fate of a scouting party which has not returned. None of us expect to find them alive, but we must recover an artifact carried by their leader, Griuman, Lieutenant of Archers.
And we move from having all dwarves to having no dwarves, because I guess they were busy with the previous level.
Yeah, looks like we have a trail to follow.
Or they figured we'd just be tired of dwarves by now. Anyway, before we proceed, I'm going to quick get us up a fresh recording file. I will be back in a second.
Alright, we have a fresh recording file, and we have a somewhat different team composition than we had last time. All the dwarves are busy getting blowed up, and so we have archers and warriors. We don't even have berserks for this mission. Of course, the warriors are all very experienced because they haven't been involved in any of the various mass casualty events that we've had.
Ready?
And we have a pretty good pool of archers, too. Actually, the archers are more experienced than the warriors. What am I talking about?
Yes?
Anyway, we follow this trail of blood to lead to the guy we're trying to find who has the bow that we need to recover. As mentioned in the intro, nobody actually thinks this guy is alive, but he has a magical thingy that we need, so we're going to need to find him anyway. Also, this level, in my opinion, I believe takes the cake for weakest force we are ever given. And I think this is even across both games, too. I don't think even the sequel gives you anything weaker than this. So, yeah, that's an interesting record for this level to hold, is just giving you the least resources to work with of any part of the game. Though, to balance that out, what we're fighting against isn't really that bad either. See, we'll occasionally have like 1 or 2 thrall rise up from the ground, which can easily be taken out by our warriors. We do want to keep the casualties to a minimum because this can turn into a battle of attrition. Alright, what's that red dot on the map? Solus. That's cause for some concern. No, 3. I want loose line. The loose line formation has the benefit of keeping them reasonably far away from each other, so that I can, without having to create a custom formation, so that I can keep them from being hit very easily by ranged attacks. But yeah, this level is following the trail of blood and trying to avoid taking too much damage because there's more we'll have to do later. And in fact, an amusing thing. So, there's a bloodstain that leads us across this river, which leads to a bloodstain up here, which leads to a bloodstain along this river, which leads to a bloodstain here, which we could have reached by going straight. And it's easy to see this bloodstain from all the way over here. So they just kind of lead us in a wild goose chase for no real reason other than to make us walk a little farther. Yeah, this level is quite a bit quieter and more relaxed than the previous level was. Both the previous mandatory level, Sons of Mirgard, and the previous optional level, A Long-Awaited Party. Both are a bit more dynamic than this. I also think this level is significantly easier than A Long-Awaited Party. It's not really easier than Sons of Mirgard. This level requires you to be fairly good at using the kind of units that you're given for this level. Not amazing, but fairly good. Whereas, you don't really have to be good at the kind of stuff that Sons of Mirgard expects you to do in order to just barely squeak by. And since your units are not... Whoa! That will happen occasionally. And since your units are not veterans, the, since your units are not veterans in Sons of Mirgard, messing up doesn't carry really significant consequences. So it's a gimmick level, but while it's somewhat hard, it isn't extremely hard. By comparison, A Long-Awaited Party gives you veterans you could potentially lose, and well, we did, but also require, as you will see from both the outtakes I appended to the end of that video, and if you watch the additional failed attempts that I'm going to post later, A Long-Awaited Party requires you to actually be good at the tactics that it's based around. You can't just kind of basically understand what it's doing and squeak by. You have to be fairly solid at what it is that that level asks you to do. And that's one of the reasons why it's so hard. And I'm pretty sure that really is why it ended up being optional. Because it's an it's a potentially extremely difficult level, but it wouldn't make sense to put it later in the game than this. It would screw up the story if that level only showed up towards the end when you're expected to be better overall. And so just saying, you might not unlock it in a normal playthrough, and if you do, just try it, and if you don't succeed, you can just try again. You can just move on to the next level without any real punishment. Alright. And we have some Thrall coming in a lovely, perfect shooting range with which to take them out. Admittedly, with only 3 archers. Also, the enemy seems to give massive priority to attacking your archers in this level. Which makes sense, actually, from their perspective, because only archers can carry the magical thingy that we've been sent to retrieve. Because the magical thingy is a bow, only an archer can carry it. A warrior can't just grab it and run. Though, admittedly, that actually makes sense for a reason that we'll get to a little bit later, why only an archer could carry the thing. Though, with the information we have now, that seems kind of silly. I believe we're actually fairly near the objective. But I'm not sure where the next bloodstain is from here. Oh, that's what the... I'm used to the much more dramatic undead rising from the ground sound from the second game. That was the entire sound. I didn't realize the sound effect was that subdued. But see, this Thrall is still chasing the archers. And now he finally turns around to go after the warriors. Alright. Oh, here it is. And with it is the bow that we came here to get.
Ready, sir.
Who to send?
Ready.
Let's
Yes.
go with you.
All right.
And a whole bunch of warriors. There's a reason for that. Alright. Get you guys into position to provide supporting fire. Send the warriors in first.
Ready.
There is a plan.
All right.
And in case my behavior doesn't immediately give this away, there is a trap.
All right.
Considering what the Thrall have been doing to us this entire level, it shouldn't be hard to
On the
figure out
way.
what kind of trap.
Right
Yeah,
away.
they're going to rise up out of the ground. However, the enemy is clever. They
On the
will
way.
not rise out of the ground just because we put units near them. Up to the... Oh,
All right.
I guess they will. I was wrong. I thought they waited until after we picked up the bow, which would make more sense, but I must be thinking of a different
On
one.
the way. Right away.
Some of the fan-made levels
Alright.
get really sadistic in their difficulty,
Alright.
where they'll have traps that you kind of are required to fall for. Alright, you grab the bow. And
On
you
the
archers,
way.
go ahead and open
Alright.
fire on that.
Sir.
You guys keep moving.
Ready.
We have the bow, and we get 15 shots, rather than the kind of pitiful number of shots that we got with the bow of stoning. The other thing is, this bow is not the bow of stoning. It is somewhat more powerful than the bow of stoning.
Yes?
Notice that it would be extremely difficult to take out this group of okay, not extremely difficult, but fairly difficult to take out this group of thrall with the force that we're given
Sir?
for this level. Because they expect us to have grabbed the bow by the time we encounter them. And this bow is the bow of furious incandescence. It does that.
Away.
Yes,
Right
we
away.
have a bow that shoots lightning bolts at people. Also, that is the reason why you need an archer to carry the bow of furious incandescence. Because we will be encountering large groups of enemies against whom we need to use the bow in order to survive. So the idea is, I guess, yes, theoretically a warrior could just grab the bow and run really fast, but you are expected to actually need to use the thing against the enemy, and so only an archer would actually be able to use a bow effectively. However, the enemies still seem to be kind of slacking off. We haven't been hit by as much as I was expecting to be. And in case you're wondering, our objective now is just to get back to where we started, with the bow. There shouldn't be too many more enemies rising up because we're going back over the path that we covered before.
Yes, sir.
And how long this takes is basically determined by the movement speed of an archer. And in true myth tradition, of not valuing life at all, technically speaking, only the archer carrying the bow has to make it to the exit in order for us to win. Everyone else can die. All that matters is that we retrieve the bow. And now we're encountering another group of enemies. This group is a bit more dangerous, though.
Sir?
Because this
On the
group
way.
has fetch and soulless and... Yeah, even just taking out those two fetch would be very difficult
On
with
the
the
way.
archers we have. Taking out the soulless on top of it would be nearly
On the way.
impossible with only 3 archers.
Ready.
Even if
On
we
the way.
manage to get the warriors to charge them.
On the way.
However, we have the bow of furious incandescence. And
Alright.
I'm not sure I'm even going to get to demonstrate it because these enemies are just running away from me. Well, I suppose when they come at me from behind, I'll blow them up. The enemies are weird. Oh, there they are. I was going to say, the enemies are being weirdly non-confrontational.
On
The enemies are being weirdly non-confrontational here. But yeah, pretty much the challenge in this level is managing your limited uses of the magical artifact to get to the end of the level before it runs out of bullets. Because if it runs out of bullets, you are pretty much hosed. Keep moving. This is also a level that gets a bit more exciting on Legendary because the encounters are a bit more dense and things are generally more hectic. And I've pretty much decided one of these days I am going to do a playthrough of this game on Legendary. Actually, the whole game. Okay, this is a group whose positioning makes them somewhat resistant to the effect of the bow.
Sir?
Fortunately, we can get them to clump together. The problem is that they're spaced far apart, so that if we were to hit them with the bow, many of them would survive. We want to get them to clump up a bit more. We do this by doing 2 things. 1, positioning our units to use kind of themselves as bait
Sir?
to get them to clump, and
Ready.
2, to get them to move closer together, and 2, picking off the enemies farther away.
All right.
And that is that. Now, I'll be honest, that is also a fairly weak formation to put melee units in. Because when they're that far away from each other, your opposing melee units can basically just pick them off one by one. So, if our warriors went after them in the right way, they could probably just barely take out all of those thrall without help from the archers. But what I did is the more classical way of taking them out versus the, I guess, more avant-garde approach of,
Yes?
okay, screw it. If you guys are going to come after me, I'm blowing you up. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to fight me. It's weird. It's like they turned away from me and then, while I wasn't looking, changed their minds and decided they actually did want to kill us. But just charging them with warriors is kind of the more avant-garde approach. It's not necessarily recommended tactics, but it can do the job. I don't know if this thrall is part of a formation or what.
Ready?
Also, yes, we took an already experienced archer and gave him a magical artifact. He's up to 55 kills already. He may actually have the most kills of any unit that we have had up to this point. Or at least of any veteran that is currently alive. And frankly, the only person who might be able to compete with this guy in kill count for the rest of the game would be Ulrich. What with Dispersal Dream. And we only really get Ulrich for one level, and he might not get that many kills with Dispersal Dream. So even that isn't a certain thing. And yeah, I don't need to worry about keeping that warrior moving, really. I feel like these Thrall were part of an event that wound up being scripted out. Like they originally intended for us to exit the level from a different area than we entered it from, so that we would have to go past them. Because there's really no route in which you have to go past those Thrall. So I really don't understand why they're there. I am going to kill them, though, because I can. Oh, darn. He's off the map. So I won't get to blow up those Thrall. He'll have to stop at 55 kills. That's plenty for him. And that is the road north. Not a very difficult level, but it is interesting because we get the magical Mega Thunder Bow. No casualties. It did it again. So the 3 archers we actually had in this level are our 3 heroes, with 2 of them with 6 battles survived and 1 with 8, and then the one with 55 kills and the other 2 with kill counts in the 20s. And instead of letting one of the warriors be a hero, our 4th hero is an archer who was not actually in this level. I really don't know how it decides who gets to be a hero and who doesn't, but it appears to be slightly broken. Also, not at all surprising, the archers did 92% of the damage and the warriors did 7.6%. Nobody's really surprised by that, considering. But, though it is kind of interesting because for the first half of the level it's all the warriors and the archers do almost nothing, then one of the archers gets the bow and becomes the MVP pretty much by default. Also, her damage ratio of 194 to 1, because the only damage was a few warriors took minor damage from some of the Thrall, and otherwise we barely even got hit. I don't believe I've ever beaten a level with no damage. Somebody always gets hit at least once. I've gotten close, like in this level, and I've gotten no casualties plenty of times, but I've never actually managed to get 0 damage. Anyway, that is going to be the end for this part. So, as usual, the Science Viking, signing off. I love you all, and I will see you next time.